Hi, Sports Shooter Jeff here. Today we're going to go over disassembly and assembly of the Glock pistols. All Glock pistols get taken apart and put together in the same fashion. Remember, this is an instructional video only. If you choose to take your pistol apart and put it back together, the responsibility lays on you. This is only for information purposes. Alright, first off we're going to take apart my Glock 34. The very first thing we always do when we pick up a new pistol is clear it. Alright, make sure that it's safe and clear. By doing that, recycle the slide several times, lock your slide to the rear, visually and physically inspect that there's no magazine, nothing in the chamber. Alright, once we've done that, we take and drop the slide, pointing the pistol in a safe direction, decock the pistol by pulling the trigger. Now we pull the slide back slightly, the slide stop, pull that down with both fingers, pull it down at the same time, pull your slide back slightly, and allow it to go forward, separating the upper and lower receiver. Set your upper receiver aside for a little bit. We'll come back to that one. Alright, the pins on your Glock pistol. The number 1 pin is the very top pin, which is steel. The number 2 pin is a polymer pin in the rear of the grip. Number 3 pin is the very large lower pin. This is the way they get taken apart in this order, 1, 2, and 3, and this is the way they get put back together, 1, 2, and 3. Alright, let's begin. Push your pin out from right to left, set that to the side. Alright, number 1 pin out, number 2 pin gets pulled out, set to the side. Number 3 pin's a little bit tricky, but you can take this apart easier by working your slide release front, forward and backward, while you're pushing on that pin gently. That releases the spring tension. If you see the grooves in here, that's where a spring lays in your slide release. Remove that pin, lift your slide release up and out, set it to the side. Now you can take out your breech block, set that to the side, pull your trigger housing out. Alright, set that to the side for a moment. Now your slide stop can be taken off, if you wish, by pushing down on this little silver leaf spring in here, and it gets pulled out from right to left. I'm not going to do that right now. If you choose to do that, be aware that there's a curved side, a little groove in the back of this. This always has to face to the rear. The front will be smooth. The reason for that is that it connects in a little ridge in your barrel. So if you put this back together incorrectly, when you pull the trigger, your slide will automatically come off. Okay. Also, your slide release, your magazine release is down inside. That requires a little screwdriver to pull the little leaf spring to the side and lift it out of the way to take out your magazine release. We're going to leave those together today. This is basically just for taking your pistol apart to perform operator maintenance. Now set your lower receiver to the side. We're going to take apart your trigger assembly. Alright, 2 fingers by the connector. This is your connector area back here. 2 fingers on the trigger. Push it away from you and lift up and out. The 2 components are held together by an S spring. Alright, this describes an S, and that's the way it gets put back together in the same way. That's how you know you've got it back together correctly. So now you take your cruciform, pull it off the spring. You can choose to leave the spring on or take it off. That's completely up to you. It has no bearing on anything else. It's easy enough to clean. Alright, to take your connector apart, all you need is your Glock tool. If you try and stick a screwdriver in here, you'll note this is a piece of plastic. It'll stretch and melt. It'll misform. It's got a little hole in the center that you can take a punch or your Glock tool, push straight through, and it'll drop out clean. Alright, that's disassembly at operator's level for the lower receiver. This will allow you to clean and lubricate everything back together. I'll cover lubrication points as I put the pistol back together. Alright, now to put this back in, you'll notice at the bottom there's a slot. Place your connector in. Without bending your connector, push it all the way down flush. It'll stick up slightly. It's designed to do that, and it's supposed to look like that. Now you connect your S-spring into the little hole that it came out of. Some go in a little bit easier than others. Alright, now we put the cruciform back in the other side of the S-spring. The S-spring, either way, is fine. It's a multi-directional spring. Just be cognizant that when you put this back together, that it describes an S. Alright, to reassemble this, make sure the side of your cruciform fits into this slot. Slide it down and move it in. There we go. Now it lays on your connector, the rear of the cruciform. A drop of oil here or a little bit of a good quality grease will lubricate this just fine. You don't need to lubricate your trigger. It's plastic on metal. It's self-lubricating. Now reassembly the lower receiver. Drop your trigger group back into place. Alright, so it sits nice and flush. Should slip right in. Alright, now your breech block goes back in. The holes go in down. Alright. Again, in the same order, number one spring in, or number one pin in. Push it all the way so that it's equal on both sides. Number two pin go in and gets pushed in so that it's equal on both sides. Now your number three pin is a little trickier, but it's no real big problem. Take your slide stop, or your slide release, excuse me. Place it in just like it goes onto the pistol, just like it sits on there normally, and it'll fit into a slot on the side of the trigger. Move it into place, push it forward, slide that pin in, and you may have to work it a little bit to get it to slide all the way in. You'll actually feel it lock in, and it'll sit in there good. You don't need a hammer and a punch to take a Glock apart. You need to finesse this without forcing it. If you force it, you tend to break things. The lower receiver is taken apart. Now to the upper receiver. Lift out your spring assembly. Set that to the side. Lift your barrel assembly out. Set that to the side. Now we're going to take apart the internal components of your slide. Lift your striker. This is your striker here. Lift this slightly. If it's in the forward position, you'll need to hear it click. Now there'll be a little plastic sleeve in there and a little gap. Slide your tool in there, placing the muzzle down. Your thumb to control this rear slide plate. Push down on that plastic sleeve, simultaneously sliding that side plate off. Alright? See, it doesn't take, you don't have to use a screwdriver or anything to pry with. This comes off very easily. Hold your thumb over it to prevent the springs from popping out. Plate's off. There's no big spring pressure, but you want to always release the springs slowly. Slide your striker out, striker assembly. Now you pull your bearing for your extractor. This is your extractor bearing. Pull that out. This does not require disassembly. Be very careful you're not too brutal with this, because if you separate it, you can put it back together, but it's better if you just keep it together. Now your striker safety, depress that and pull your extractor out. Depress that and your striker will come out. If your gun's clean, it'll fall out. Pull your safety out. There we go. Now your slide's completely disassembled. You set that to the side. Alright, a small note here is this little safety has a spring in here that needs to remain in there. If it comes apart, it's fine, but when you put it back together, mash it in until you feel it click and it'll stay in there. While you're cleaning it, it's easy to dislodge that and lose it. Now we're going to cover taking your striker assembly apart. This is not required and generally discouraged every time you disassemble the pistol. You don't need it just to clean things. Right? But if you choose to take it apart, I'll demonstrate that. Set your slide up. Place the striker assembly in backwards. Now you're going to need to do this by keeping it away from you. Alright? Pull your spring down and lift out your spring cups. Make sure you maintain constant pressure on that spring and release it slowly. Now you can disassemble your striker assembly. You can clean everything up from here. Always remember, no lubrication goes into the channel or on your striker. If you do, dirt and grit and carbon will build up and retard the motion of this striker assembly and not allow it to move freely, and you'll get malfunctions with it. Okay? Cleaned everything up. Be careful of what you stick down in this slide. Don't stick a cleaning brush in there scrubbing it out. If you pull it out, there's a plastic sleeve. That cleaning brush will grab that plastic sleeve and pull it out, and you'll be taking a trip to the gun shop to have them order a new one and reassemble it. So with all that said and done with, once you've cleaned everything off, we're ready for reassembly. Striker goes in the back, all the way in, gets put back in your frame, or in your slide, excuse me. Alright, this is a little bit tricky, and this is why I don't recommend it on a normal reassembly. These little spring cups, your pistol will not work without those spring cups in there. Alright, spring down, spring cups go in there. These are very similar to anybody that's worked on a motor. This is the same setup as valve springs and valve spring retainers. Alright, once you've got that reassembled, you'll note that it didn't catch. That's why I don't recommend you disassemble this all the time. Slide your spring back down and try it again. Alright, once you've got this down, take a good look at it and make sure that these spring cups made up good and that everything's back together as it should be. It should sit in there flush and even on both sides so it looks almost like a perfect circle. Alright, now to reassemble this, first thing, striker safety, place that in, ensure that you have spring tension in there. That allows you to know that the spring isn't missing. Your extractor assembly, you'll notice a little hook and a pin. Pin to the rear, hook to the front, slides down in, push down on your safety, and you'll feel your extractor go in all the way so that it sits just a little lower than flush. Alright. That's the correct way of doing that. It actually locks that piece in. Now you take your extractor bearing, place that back in the small hole, place your striker assembly back in. Alright. Now take your slide plate, again muzzle braced on the table, place it in the little grooves. You'll see the little steel in here that go in the grooves in the back of the slide. Now again, with the rear of the slide pointed away from you, depress your striker assembly where you slide that slide plate in. Now it'll catch on your bearing. Depress your bearing, gently close it. Alright, once it's closed, everything should be good to go. If it won't close, then there's a problem with that. Alright, now again, barrel goes in. Alright, lubrication on this, very, very minimal. Again, no lubrication in this assembly here, in this channel. None at all. You can put a little wipe of oil, put a little drop of oil on your finger and wipe it on that safety. Because that's the top of the cruciform. Depresses that as the trigger gets pulled. Alright. One drop each on the slide rails. You can set the slide down and hold it and allow it to drip allow it to run down the rails. Alright, once you've done that, barrel goes back in, spring back in, reassemble your slide and lower receiver. Alright, now we're going to go over the safety checks to verify that you have in fact put this pistol back together correctly. Alright, first of all, pull your slide all the way to the rear, let it go forward. You'll note the little safety bar inside your trigger should be sticking out. Without touching that, pull back on your trigger. Again, always pistol pointed in the safe direction. The trigger shouldn't go off. What this does is that guards against an accidental discharge if your pistol gets dropped on the grip end. Alright, now that we've verified that that works, pull your trigger. Alright, hear and feel it click. Pull your slide to the rear, holding it vertically. Allow your slide to go forward, and your slide should lock into battery. Alright, now you can pull your trigger again. Alright, now shake it with the trigger being held to the rear, up and down, and you'll hear the striker assembly move freely. You want this. That's optimal. Alright, this is reassembly of your Glock pistol and the safety checks to verify that everything's working properly. Alright, thank you.